UN is significantly increasing its humanitarian assistance in Ukraine to respond to the escalating crisis. Madam President, the Secretary General has followed with great alarm reports of heavy fighting around the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant in Ukraine. We understand that the fire affected a training facility and not the cooling system or power center. Military operations around nuclear sites and other critical civilian infrastructure are not only unacceptable, but highly irresponsible. Ukraine knows only too well the devastation of a major nuclear accident. The Chernobyl disaster in 1986 stands as a lasting example of why it is vital to ensure all nuclear power plants have the highest standards of safety and security. Every effort should be taken to avoid a catastrophic nuclear incident. The persistence and bravery of the Ukrainian personnel who continue to keep power plants safely operational during this crisis are to be applauded. Madam President, attacks on nuclear power facilities are contrary to international humanitarian law. Specifically, Article 56 of Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Convention states that, and I quote, "Works or installations containing dangerous forces, namely dams, dikes, and nuclear electrical generating stations, shall not be made the object of attack, even where these objects are military objectives, if such attack may cause the release of dangerous forces and consequent severe losses among the civilian population." End quote. The Secretary General welcomes the statements and actions by the International Atomic Energy Agency on this issue and is ready to assist however he can. It's vital that all parties work with the IAEA to establish an appropriate framework that will ensure the safe, secure, and reliable operation of Ukraine's nuclear power plants. Urgent and safe passage should be granted to IAEA personnel should they need to travel to Ukraine to work with regulators. Madam President, we welcome the reported agreement between the Ukrainian and Russian negotiators during their second round of talks in Belarus yesterday. We understand the discussion focused on the establishment of humanitarian corridors to allow safe passage for civilians and the delivery of humanitarian assistance. We hope that this reported agreement is implemented without delay and that a full and unconditional ceasefire is quickly agreed and enacted. We urge the sides to continue negotiations and to make urgent progress on security, humanitarian, and other issues. Madam President, as the Secretary General has emphatically stated, the sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity of Ukraine within its internationally recognized borders must be respected in line with General Assembly resolutions. What we are witnessing in Ukraine today is inconsistent with the principles of the UN Charter. Only diplomacy and negotiations can achieve a truly lasting solution to the current conflict. The fighting in Ukraine must stop, and it must stop now. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank Ms. DiCarlo for her briefing, and I now give the floor to Mr. Rafael Mariano Grossi. We're hoping the connection will be working from the airplane. We cannot hear you.
Go to the list and then come back to him.
We've lost Mr. Grossi for the moment. We're going to start with our list of speakers and then come back to him when connection is reestablished. I'd like to therefore invite those council members who wish to make statements, and I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'd like to thank Under-Secretary General DiCarlo for her briefing, and we look forward to hearing the briefing from Mr. Grossi. The United Kingdom and our partners called this urgent meeting because Russian forces last night attacked the largest nuclear power station in Europe. We're grateful to the Ukrainian firefighters and authorities who got the fire under control and are working bravely to ensure that the plant remains safe. We support the work of the IAEA in Ukraine and are relieved that so far they have reported that none of the safety systems in the plant was affected and that there was no release of radioactive material. Colleagues, this is the first time that a state has attacked a fueled and functioning nuclear power plant. International law requires special protection for nuclear facilities, and it is difficult to see how Russia's actions were compatible with its commitments under Article 56 of the Additional Protocol of the Geneva Conventions. It must not happen again. Even in the midst of an illegal invasion of Ukraine, Russia must keep fighting away from and protect the safety and security of nuclear sites. Colleagues, President Putin said yesterday that the special military operation, or as everyone else calls it, the war, was going to plan. Everyone around this table knows that is not true. President Putin misjudged the strength, resilience, and will of the Ukrainian people to his invasion. He underestimated the world's condemnation of his actions. 141 votes in the General Assembly and the unprecedented sanctions on Russia demonstrate the strength of the global response. Every day this war continues, the destruction it brings to Ukraine, the suffering it inflicts on Ukrainian and Russian people, and the risks it poses to international peace and security increase. This must stop. We call on Russia to end this violence, withdraw its troops, and enter into serious peace negotiations. I thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for their statement. I will now try and give the floor to Mr. Rafael Mariano Grossi to give his briefing to the Council.
Thank you, Madam President. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. We can hear you.
Very good. So I will try to proceed with my briefing on the current situation in the Ukraine, and especially after the events last night. We have been in contact with the Nuclear Regulation Agency of the Ukraine from the very beginning of the conflict, and we have been receiving updates and information from them without interruption. In general, the situation could be described as follows. The nuclear installations and the nuclear facilities in Ukraine are quite important. 4 big sites, 15 reactors and associated facilities, plus the site of Chernobyl. Regarding Chernobyl, already last week, we were informed, and it was so confirmed afterwards, that the Russian special military forces took charge of the site. At the same time, the operators of the plant of the Chernobyl plant continued to run the day-by-day operations over there. A few days ago, we were informed again by the Russian government that military forces were moving in the area of Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant with the similar mission to take over control of this facility. We got information in the sense that their advance towards the perimeter of the nuclear power plant was met with opposition and some group of civilians obstructing the access to the plant. Finally, this happened, and last night, in the early hours of the morning, we got information that a projectile had impacted a building adjacent to the block of reactors, 6 of them. The projectile impacted this building and a fire ensued, which was after some time put out by the fire brigade at the station. We confirm through our contacts at the regulator, but also directly from the plant, we were able to confirm that no security or safety systems had been compromised. Neither the reactors themselves had been hit by this projectile. Only, as I say and repeat, this building which caught fire, and perhaps you saw some images of that in the social media. After this, the operation of and at the plant had continued. We consider from a technical point of view that operation continues normally, although, as I have stressed to the board of governors of the IAEA, there is no, of course, normalcy about this situation when there are military forces, of course, in charge of the site. In terms of the next steps, we continue our permanent contact with the Ukrainian authorities, governmental, nuclear regulatory, and also Energoatom, the company which operates these facilities, and also operators there. This is or constitutes the basis of the regular updates, more than 10 or 12 at this point, which you have been seeing on the websites of the IAEA. At the same time, today, I indicated in the morning my readiness to travel as soon as practicable to Chernobyl in order to consult, of course, with our Ukrainian counterparts, but also, if necessary and when necessary, to the forces in charge, in order to establish a stable framework so the observance of the basic principles of safety and security, starting with the physical integrity of the facilities, can be observed. Basic elements of this initiative proposal have already been shared with the Ukrainian counterparts and the Russian authorities, which are at this point evaluating that. We believe that having received a direct request for assistance, it is our duty at the IAEA to hit this call and to try to provide assistance. Needless to say, in particular, Madam President, to your body and the distinguished representatives over there, that this mission of the IAEA if and when it takes place, would not, of course, have anything to do with the political and diplomatic aspects that are in the purview of the Security Council. This mission would be strictly restricted and circumscribed to the safety and security of the nuclear installations in Ukraine, which are evidently, and as facts have shown, under constant danger of damage and accidents. So, Madam President, I hope these basic elements will help you in the evaluation of the situation. We request members of the Council, as I have done in Vienna at my Board of Governors, to support my efforts as Director General and those of the IAEA in order to ensure a basic element in this very difficult situation, which is the safety and the security of this important infrastructure of the country. I thank you very much, Madam President, and I will be ready in case there are questions or particular points that might not be clear to clarify them. I thank you very much, and I excuse myself for the pure quality of my connection. As you know, I'm airborne now. I'm on my way to Tehran to deal with another issue which is of direct interest of the Council, which is the hopefully solution of the outstanding aspects of the nuclear power program in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Thank you very much.
I thank Mr. Grossi for his briefing, and we'll now continue with the list of speakers and then come back for any questions to the briefers. I now give the floor to the representative of Albania. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'd like to thank USG Di Carlo, and we're happy that we could listen to DG Grossi, and I'd like to reassure him of our full support in his efforts on the issue on the issue that we're discussing today. Dear colleagues, 10 days into the so-called special operation, which in reality is the operation How to Invade Your Neighbor, and we are in the midst of a large-scale human tragedy running towards an overall catastrophe for Ukraine first, but for Russia as well, and as we see every day, with serious implications for the wider Europe. Thousands have been killed, with at least 2,000 civilians. According to UN reports, some 12 million people are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. 1 million have already fled the country, the fastest and largest mass exodus of people in conflict situations in decades. All developments of this major geopolitical crisis, artificially created by Russia's unprovoked and unjustified aggression against Ukraine, indicate unmistakably that it is headed towards further escalation. An overwhelming vote in the UNSG just 2 days ago told Russia that it could not take the world hostage. Unfortunately, this loud call by the world asking Russia to stop its aggression is not heard in Moscow, and Russia remains defiant and is stubbornly descending into abyss. Dear colleagues, the world was alarmed late last night after news of the fire at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power station caused by Russian shelling. A huge blaze at the site of Europe's biggest nuclear power station was, thankfully, quickly extinguished. Yet we remain gravely concerned, and it is alarming that Russian forces have captured the nuclear power plant. Russia's grip on a plant that provides more than 1/5 of Ukraine's electricity is a serious cause of concern and could have huge repercussions on civilians and Ukraine's economy. Fighting at the plant or any other disturbance could cause a potential nuclear disaster, radioactive damage, and have irreparable consequences for Europe's environment. It is difficult not to have in mind the dreadful images of Chernobyl. We welcome the quick reactions from IAEA and the reassurance that we heard from DG Grossi, putting its Incident and Emergency Center in full response due to the gravity of the situation. They should be given urgent and hindered access to verify and monitor the conditions and ensure safeguards are all in place, as the situation remains very challenging. Russian occupiers must immediately allow unfettered access for emergency service to the plant and whatever else is needed. We urge the IAEA to continue working closely with Ukraine with a view to providing maximum possible assistance to the country as it seeks to maintain nuclear safety and security in the current difficult circumstances. It is important for the nuclear power plant to continue to be operated by its regular staff. We are very concerned about the reports from the operator that the situation remains difficult. We call on Russia to end its aggression, withdraw its troops out of Ukraine, to hold use of force near any nuclear power plant and any civilian infrastructure in general, and respect Article 56 of the Additional Protocol of the Geneva Convention. Attacking civilians and civilian infrastructure constitutes a crime, and perpetrators must and will be held accountable. We welcome the establishment by the UN Human Rights Council of an international commission of inquiry to investigate war crimes committed in the aggression against Ukraine. Evidence must be gathered, documented, and presented to the courts. We support the ICC prosecutor to investigate and document crimes committed for the purpose of accountability. Dear colleagues, the UN was not created to take humankind to heaven, but to save humanity from hell, as Dag Hammarskjöld famously said. It falls upon this council to do what it can and what is needed to save Ukraine, its people, and entire Europe from the hell where Russia is heading to with its relentless aggression. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Albania for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Madam President. By the grace of God, the world narrowly averted a nuclear catastrophe last night. We all waited to exhale as we watched the horrific situation unfold in real time. I applaud the ability of the Ukrainian operators to keep all 6 reactors in safe conditions while under attack and to report as they were able to their nuclear regulator. Moreover, we appreciate the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine for its continuous updates to the IAEA and to the international community. We are gravely concerned that the Ukrainian operators are now doing their jobs under extreme duress. Russia's attack last night put Europe's largest nuclear power at grave risk. It was incredibly reckless and dangerous, and it threatened the safety of civilians across Russia, Ukraine, and Europe. As a first step, we call on Russia to withdraw its troops from the plant to permit medical treatment for injured personnel, to ensure operators have full access to the site and are able to communicate with nuclear regulators, and to allow the operators to conduct shift changes to ensure the continued safe operation of the plant. Ukrainian firefighters and nuclear engineers must have full access to the nuclear facility to assess damage, particularly to water intake piping, and mitigate a further deterioration of the situation if needed. Nuclear facilities cannot become part of this conflict. Reliable electricity is vital for the nuclear facility, as are backup diesel generators and fuel. Safe transit corridors must be maintained. Russia must halt any further use of force that might put at further risk all 15 operable reactors across Ukraine, or interfere with Ukraine's ability to maintain the safety and the security of its 37 nuclear facilities and their surrounding populations. The United States remains highly concerned that Russian military forces controlling the Chernobyl site have not permitted operators there to have a shift change since last week. This is highly irresponsible behavior and causes grave concerns for continued safe operation of both sites. And we call on all countries to support IAEA Director General Grossi in his efforts to find arrangements going forward to ensure nuclear safety and prevent a nuclear catastrophe in Ukraine. Over the past 9 days, we have witnessed the devastating impacts of President Putin's war of choice on the Ukrainian people. Yesterday, the UN reported that Russia's invasion had turned 500,000 children into refugees. Russia has killed thousands of Ukrainians and sacrificed thousands more Russian soldiers' lives in the process. Russia is destroying critical infrastructure, which is denying people drinking water to stay alive and gas to keep people from freezing to death in the middle of winter. The humanitarian impact of this destruction will be significant. 141 nations across the world have called loudly and clearly on President Putin to stop this brutal, unjustified, unprovoked attack. Not only has he not listened, we've just witnessed a dangerous new escalation that represents a dire threat to all of Europe and the world. To my Russian counterparts, this council needs answers. We need to hear you say this won't happen again, as our UK colleague just stated. We call on you to withdraw your troops and weaponry from Ukraine. We call on you to respect Ukraine's borders, its people, and the UN Charter. We call on you to respect your own troops enough not to send them into an unjust war or on a suicide mission against a nuclear power plant. We call on Russia to abide by its international law obligations. The world demands that Russia abide by international humanitarian law, which prohibits intentionally targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure, and allow humanitarian agencies full and secure access to people in need of aid. The United States and our partners have called for a briefing this Monday on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine. We support the urgent work by humanitarian organizations on a humanitarian pause to allow for safe passage and the delivery of humanitarian supplies. President Putin must stop this humanitarian catastrophe by ending this war and ceasing these unconscionable attacks against the people of Ukraine. Mr. Putin must stop this madness, and he must stop it now. Cooler heads must prevail. Russian forces are now 20 miles and closing from Ukraine's second largest nuclear facility. So this imminent danger continues. We narrowly avoided a disaster last night. The international community must be unanimous in demanding Russia's forces stop their dangerous assault. And as I've said before, the people of Ukraine are counting on us, and we must not let them down. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for her statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Madame la Présidente,
Madam President,
je remercie Monsieur
I
Grossi
would like to thank Mr.
et Madame
Grossi
Di Carlo pour leurs
and Madame Di
interventions.
Carlo for their statements.
La France est gravement
France
préoccupée
is
des
seriously
risques
concerned
pour la sûreté, la
about the risks
sécurité
for the
et les
safety,
garanties
security,
nucléaires
and
qui
nuclear
résultent de
safeguards
l'invasion russe.
that are a result of the
C'est
Russian
pourquoi,
invasion.
avec
This
ses
is
partenaires,
why,
elle a
with its
demandé que le
partners,
Conseil
France
de
has asked the
sécurité
Security
se
Council
réunisse en
meet
urgence.
urgently.
Le 24
On the
février,
24th of
les forces
February,
russes
Russian
sont entrées dans
forces
la zone de
entered the
Tchernobyl.
Chernobyl zone.
L'équipe d'exploitation de la
The
centrale
team
a
running
été
the
retenue
facility was
et
retained and
réquisitionnée par les
requisitioned
militaires
by
russes.
Russian military.
Le 27
On the
février,
27th
une
of
forte
February,
détonation a
strong,
été enregistrée
loud
près
detonation
d'un
was
centre
recorded
d'entreposage
near
de déchets à
a
Kiev.
center for
Ce
waste
matin,
storage
un incendie s'est
in
déclaré
Kiev. This
dans la
morning,
plus
a
grande
fire
centrale
was
nucléaire
declared
d'Europe
in the
à la
largest
suite de
nuclear
l'attaque russe.
facility in Europe after the Russian
Comme l'a
attack.
indiqué le ministre de
As
l'Europe et des
indicated
Affaires
by
étrangères, la France
the
condamne
Minister of Europe
fortement
and Foreign
cette
Affairs,
atteinte
France
à
strongly
l'intégrité d'une
condemns
structure
this attack
nucléaire
on
dont
the
il faut
integrity of a
garantir
nuclear
la
structure,
sécurité.
which we need to guarantee.
Les conséquences d'un
and
accident
guarantee its security.
nucléaire résultant de l'agression
The
militaire commise par la Russie
results
contre
of the
l'Ukraine
aggression
sont
of
potentiellement
Russia against
dévastatrices pour la santé
Ukraine
humaine
are
et pour
possibly
l'environnement.
devastating for
En
human
2009,
health and the
la
environment.
Russie a
In
approuvé avec le
2009,
reste de la
Russia
conférence
approved with
générale
the
de
rest of
l'AIEA
the General
la
Conference of the
décision
IAEA
selon
a
laquelle
decision
toute
according
attaque
to
et
which
menace
any
armée contre des
armed attack
installations
on
nucléaires
and threat against
consacrées
nuclear
à des fins
facilities
pacifiques
devoted to peaceful
constitue une
purposes
violation des principes de
constitutes
la
a
Charte des Nations
violation of
Unies,
the principle of
du
the
droit
United Nations
international et
Charter,
du statut de l'agence.
international law,
La
and
compétence du
the
Conseil de
statutes of
sécurité
the
dans cette
body.
circonstance est
Russia,
également
in this
établie
circumstance,
par les résolutions de la
is
conférence
also
générale de
needs to
l'AIEA.
adhere to the
La Russie doit cesser
resolutions of the
immédiatement ses activités
agency
illégales et
and the General
dangereuses
Conference. Russia should
afin de
immediately
rétablir le
cease its
contrôle
illegal
des autorités
activities which are
ukrainiennes sur
dangerous in order
toutes
to
les
restore
installations
control to the
et matières
Ukrainian authorities
nucléaires à
on
l'intérieur
all
des
nuclear
frontières
materials
internationalement
and
reconnues de
facilities
l'Ukraine.
within the internationally
La
recognized
Russie doit
borders of the
également
Ukraine.
autoriser un
Russia
accès régulier et sans
should
entrave
also
du
authorize
personnel des
regular
installations
and unfettered
pour
access
garantir la
to the
poursuite de leur
facilities for
exploitation en
the
toute
team
sécurité.
running the facilities so
Nous
that they can
appelons
do their
au plein
jobs and
respect de la
safely.
Convention sur la
We
sûreté
call for the full
nucléaire
respect of the
et des autres
Convention on
conventions
Nuclear
pertinentes.
Safety and other relevant conventions.
La France soutient les
France
efforts du
supports the
directeur
efforts
général de
of the
l'AIEA
General Director
pour la
of the
surveillance continue de la
IAEA
sûreté
for
et de la
ongoing
sécurité
monitoring
des
of the safety and
installations
security
nucléaires
of
en
nuclear
Ukraine,
facilities in Ukraine,
en contact étroit avec les
who is
autorités
in close
ukrainiennes.
contact
Nous
with Ukrainian
demandons au
authorities.
directeur
We
général
would
de
ask
l'AIEA
the Director
d'utiliser
General
tous les
of the
instruments
agency to
de
use
l'agence
all instruments
pour
available to
soutenir
the
les
agency
efforts de
to
l'Ukraine
support
afin
Ukraine's
d'assurer la
efforts in order
sûreté et la
to ensure
sécurité
the
de
safety and
toutes les
security of
installations
all
du pays.
facilities around the
À
country.
cet égard, la
In
France
this
apporte
regard,
son
France
soutien à la
fully
proposition du
supports
directeur
the
général de
proposal of the
l'AIEA
Director General
pour
of
la
the IAEA
négociation
for
d'engagement entre les parties au
negotiations
conflit
about
armé en
commitments
Ukraine
between the
afin
parties to the
d'assurer
conflict
le
in
respect des
Ukraine
7
in order
principes
to
qu'il a
ensure
établis lors
respect
du
of the
Conseil des
7
gouverneurs
principles
du 2
set
mars
forth
2022
during the Board of
sur
Governors
les
meeting of the 2nd
implications
of March
de la situation en
2022
Ukraine
with
en
regard to the
matière de sûreté,
implications of the
de
situation in Ukraine
sécurité
in the areas
et de
of
garantie
safety,
nucléaire.
security, and nuclear safeguards.
La France réitère
France
enfin son soutien
finally reiterates
indéfectible
its
à
unwavering
l'indépendance, à la
support for the
souveraineté et à
independence,
l'intégrité
sovereignty,
territoriale
and
de
territorial
l'Ukraine
integrity
dans
of
ses
Ukraine
frontières
within its
internationalement reconnues.
internationally recognized
Depuis le
borders.
24 février,
Since the
nous avons
24th of
été
February,
témoins du coût
we have
humain
seen the
dévastateur de
devastating
l'agression
human cost
russe.
of Russian aggression.
Une cessation immédiate des
Immediate
hostilités
cessation
et
of
l'application
hostilities and
stricte
strict
du droit
application
international
of international
humanitaire est
humanitarian law
urgente.
is
C'est
urgent.
pourquoi avec le Mexique,
And this is
la
why with
France
Mexico,
porte une
France
résolution
is
dans cet
putting forth
objectif
a resolution
afin
with
de
this
mettre
goal
un
in
terme au
mind in
drame
order to put an
humanitaire
end to
qui
the
se joue sous nos
humanitarian
yeux,
drama which is
ici comme
unfolding
ailleurs.
before
Le
our
Conseil de
eyes.
sécurité doit
And
assumer
here,
toutes ses
the Security
responsabilités.
Council should
Je vous
fully
remercie.
assume its responsibility in this regard. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ireland.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I would like to thank Under Secretary General De Carlo and Director General Grossi for their briefings and Director General Grossi's call for urgent action today. We're here today because of our concern about the ongoing situation at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant. Madam President, the Russian Federation's continuing unprovoked, unjustified invasion of Ukraine is wreaking havoc and destruction on Ukraine and on its people. This aggression is inflicting enormous hardship and suffering. Ireland stands full square in unwavering solidarity with the people of Ukraine, who continue to show extraordinary courage and resilience in the face of this act of aggression. The parties to the conflict must comply with international humanitarian law. This includes the obligation not to attack civilian objects. It includes the obligation and clear prohibition against indiscriminate and disproportionate attacks. It includes the obligation to take all feasible precautions in an attack. We demand nothing less than full respect for those obligations. The attack last night by Russian forces on the nuclear power plant at Zaporizhzhya has shocked us all. It has sent a chilling signal across Europe, indeed across the globe. This further reinforces the concerns arising from the armed takeover by Russia of the nuclear facilities in the Chernobyl exclusion zone just 8 days ago. Ireland condemns the reckless firing against nuclear power plants. Armed attacks and threats against nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes constitute violations of international law, including the principles of the UN Charter, Additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions, and the IAEA Statute, and Director General Grossi has made that point abundantly clear. In attacking such sites, the Russian Federation risks an environmental disaster, compounding the extraordinary human tragedy we are witnessing today in Ukraine. A radioactive release from any of these sites would also have serious repercussions for human life and health, for agriculture, and for the environment in Ukraine, in the Russian Federation itself, and the wider European region. President, we call on the Russian Federation to fully respect its obligations under the UN Charter, international law, and the IAEA Statute. All international nuclear safety and security standards must be maintained. We call on the Russian Federation to allow Ukrainian personnel at the plant to do their work safely and without undue pressure. It is crucial that safety systems at the plant are not compromised. Power supplied to the plant must be maintained. This is essential not just for the 6 reactors at the site, but also for the spent fuel stored there. There should be no interruption of basic services, including energy, to the population across Ukraine. Ireland commends the bravery and the professionalism of the Ukrainian personnel at the plant and the Ukrainian nuclear regulator in seeking to ensure safety at the plant in very difficult circumstances. We are deeply concerned, however, for their safety and their well-being. At this worrying time, Ireland fully supports the work of the IAEA and its Incident and Emergency Centre in its ongoing monitoring and assistance in respect of the nuclear safety and security situation in Ukraine. We believe it will be important for the IAEA Director General to keep this Council informed regarding nuclear safety and security in Ukraine. President, cavalier, reckless behaviour with dangerous forces such as nuclear power is unacceptable. It's utterly unacceptable. The prospect of a nuclear event at Europe's largest nuclear power plant will have global impacts. We all saw what happened at Chernobyl and Fukushima. This is a spectre no one at this table should be willing to countenance. Madam President, the humanitarian implications of damage to civilian infrastructure cannot be underestimated. The electricity generated by Zaporizhzhya power powers homes and hospitals, ensuring that civilians can feed and heat themselves, powering life-saving medical equipment. Let's be clear, civilian infrastructure should never be a target, and it must stop now. Mr. President, once more, Ireland urges the Russian Federation to immediately cease all hostilities, to unconditionally withdraw from the entire territory of Ukraine, and to refrain from further threats or the use of force of any kind against Ukraine or indeed any other member state. To avert nuclear disaster, Ireland today calls most urgently for an immediate cessation of military activities at Ukraine's nuclear facilities. We call for the competent Ukrainian authorities to be allowed to promptly regain full control over Zaporizhzhya and all their nuclear facilities. One more time, Madam President, we call sincerely for a return to dialogue and diplomacy in good faith. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Ireland for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Norway.
President, I thank Undersecretary General Di Carlo and Director General Grossi for their briefing to the Council. And I also thank IAEA for providing frequent factual updates on matters within the agency's mandate. We call this meeting with partners because, President, this is an unjust war, unjustly fought. Norway condemns the Russian Federation's invasion of Ukraine. And now, as reported, we see shelling and fighting in the immediate vicinity of a civilian nuclear power plant. It takes little imagination to understand the possible consequences of such action. It shows a blatant disregard for Ukrainian lives, for Russian lives, and indeed life in Europe and beyond. It is irresponsible and unacceptable. Civilians can never be a target. A nuclear power plant can never be a target. Yet, this is only the latest in a string of assaults on homes, hospitals, schools, bridges, roads, and other vital civilian infrastructure. Damage and destruction of a nuclear plant would put us all in danger. It can lead to a radioactive nightmare with the most severe long-term effects for generations. President, international humanitarian law is not optional. We call on Russia to fulfill its obligation to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure. These actions also violate the obligation under IHL to maintain the physical integrity of nuclear facilities and keep them safe at all times. And we recall the decision of the IAEA General Conference from 2009 that, and I quote, "Any armed attack on the threat against nuclear facilities devoted to peaceful purposes constitutes a violation of the principles of the United Nations Charter, international law, and the statute of the agency," unquote. We commend the efforts of the State Nuclear Regulatory Inspectorate of Ukraine to keep the international community updated on the status of nuclear safety and security in their country. And our thoughts go to the staff, the men and women working at nuclear facilities in Ukraine under these dire circumstances. We laud their commitments to ensuring continuing nuclear safety and security. Their perseverance is an example to us all. President, Russia bears full responsibility for this act of aggression and all the destruction and loss of life it has and will continue to cause. We reiterate our call upon the Russian Federation to immediately withdraw its forces from Ukrainian territory and cease all threats and military actions, including in the vicinity of and directed at nuclear facilities. A ceasefire is desperately and urgently needed. Diplomacy must win. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Norway for their statement. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Госпожа председатель,
Madam President,
сегодняшнее заседание
today's meeting
очередная попытка
is another attempt by the Kiev authorities to kindle artificial hysteria about what is taking place in Ukraine.
А в этом им подпевают их западные покровители.
And they're being assisted in this by their Western backers.
Есть перевод?
The speaker is asking if there is interpretation.
Прошу прощения, госпожа
I
председатель.
apologize, Madam President.
Сегодняшнее
Today's
заседание
meeting
не работает динамика.
The speaker is not working,
My microphone
says,
doesn't work.
and the microphone doesn't work, says the speaker.
My
Can you speak? Can you try?
Госпожа председатель,
Madam President, Madam President,
That's fine. Сегодняшнее заседание
today's meeting
очередная
is another
попытка
attempt
киевских
by
властей
Kiev
разжечь
authorities to
искусственную
kindle
истерию по
artificial
поводу
hysteria around what is
происходящего на
happening
Украине.
in Ukraine.
А им подпевает в этом их
And
западные
they're being
покровители.
assisted in this by their Western
Вот и
backers.
сегодня мы слышали
Today we
очередную
have once
ложь
again
о том,
heard
что
lies
российские
about
войска
how
атаковали
Russian troops
Запорожскую атомную
attacked
электростанцию.
the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant.
Это все часть
And this is
беспрецедентной
all part of
кампании
an
лжи и
unprecedented campaign of
дезинформации
lies and
против России.
disinformation against Russia.
Вы пытаетесь представить дело
You're
так,
trying to present the
что
situation
Запорожская атомная
in such a
электростанция
way as
якобы
though
подверглась
the
обстрелу
Zaporizhzhya nuclear
российскими
power plant
военными,
was
и
allegedly
там возник
shelled
пожар.
by the Russian military as a
Эти
result of which a
заявления
fire
не
broke out.
соответствуют действительности.
These statements are
Город-
simply untrue.
Город Энергодар,
The city of Enerhodar,
Запорожская атомная
the Zaporizhzhya
электростанция
nuclear power
и
plant, or
прилегающие к ней
ZNPP, and
территории
the adjacent
были
territories
взяты под контроль
were
российскими
taken
военными еще
by
28
the Russian
февраля.
army under its control back on February 28th.
По итогам переговоров
As
с
a result of
руководством
negotiations
атомной
with the
электростанции
management
была
of the power
достигнута
plant, an agreement was
договоренность
reached
об ее приеме под
to
российскую войсковую
place it
охрану.
under the guard of the Russian military.
Цель как раз в том, чтобы не
goal
допустить использования украинскими
prevent
националистическими или
The Ukrainian nationalists or
иными
other
террористическими
terrorist
формированиями
forces
сложившейся
from
обстановки
taking
для
advantage of
организации
the current
ядерной
situation to
провокации,
organize a nuclear provocation.
обеспечить безопасность
The goal is
станции,
also to ensure the
а
security
также
of the
не
station
допустить перебоев
and
поставок
prevent
электроэнергии
interruptions in power
населению
supply
Украины
to
и
the
европейским
population of
потребителям.
Ukraine and European consumers.
В настоящий момент Запорожская
present,
атомная
The
электростанция и
Zaporizhzhya nuclear
прилегающие
power
территории
plant and adjacent
охраняются
territory are
российскими
being guarded by Russian
военными.
troops.
Для этого привлекается личный состав,
In order to do
имеющий
this, personnel has
соответствующий
been
опыт,
brought in with relevant
в том числе
experience,
навыки
including experience
эксплуатации
in operating the
инженерно-технических
engineering
средств,
and technical
которыми
facilities
оборудована Запорожская
that
атомная
the nuclear power
электростанция.
plant is equipped with.
Аналогичная ситуация
A
и в
similar
зоне Чернобыльской атомной электростанции.
the situation is currently similar in the area of the Chernobyl power plant.
Безопасность ее объектов
The
обеспечивается
security
совместно
of its
российскими
facilities
вооруженными
is being
силами
ensured jointly by the
и
Russian armed
украинскими операторами
forces
ядерных
and
установок.
the Ukrainian operators of
Наши
the nuclear
военнослужащие в
installations,
работу
and our
операторов
servicemen are
украинских
not
станций не вмешиваются,
interfering in the work of the operators
ограничиваясь
of the
исключительно
Ukrainian power
задачами их
plants.
охраны.
They are limiting their objectives merely to ensuring their security.
Как информировала нас Минобороны
As we
России,
were informed by the Russian Ministry of
ночью
Defense,
4
on the
марта
night of March
во
4th,
время
while
патрулирования
patrolling
охраняемой
the
территории,
protected
но
area,
не на самой Запорожской атомной
but not the
электростанции,
area of the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power
на
plant
прилегающей
itself,
к ней
rather
территории.
the adjacent territory.
российский мобильный патруль
A Russian
подвергся
mobile
нападению
patrol
со
was
стороны
attacked
украинской диверсионной
by
группы.
a Ukrainian sabotage group.
Для провоцирования ответного
In
огня
order to provoke
по
return
зданию
fire on the
из окон
building,
нескольких этажей учебно-тренировочного
there
комплекса,
was
расположенного за пределами
heavy small
Запорожской
arms
атомной
fire that
электростанции.
was opened on Russian troops from the windows of several
По
floors of the
российским
training
военнослужащим был
complex
открыт
that is
шквальный огонь
located
из стрелкового
just
оружия.
outside the territory of the nuclear power plant.
Ответным огнем российского
The
патруля
Russian
огневые
patrol
точки
returned
украинских
fire on the firing
диверсантов
points
в
of the
здании
Ukrainian saboteurs
учебно-тренировочного
in the building
комплекса
of the
были
training
подавлены.
complex and suppressed their fire.
Покидая здание,
As they were
украинская
leaving,
диверсионная
the
группа
Ukrainian
совершила
sabotage
поджог
group set fire
учебно-тренировочного
to
комплекса.
the training facility.
Еще раз подчеркну,
Let me
он не
emphasize
находится
once
на
again that this
территории
building is
Запорожской
not
атомной
located
электростанции.
on the territory of the Zaporizhzhya nuclear power plant.
Прибывшими к корпусу пожарными расчетами
The fire
возгорание
brigades that
помещения было
arrived were
ликвидировано.
able to extinguish the fire on the premises.
В момент этой провокации
At the
никого из
time of this
штатных
provocation,
сотрудников
none of the regular
Запорожской атомной
employees of the
электростанции в
Zaporizhzya nuclear power
учебно-тренировочном
plant were
корпусе не было.
present in the training building.
В настоящее время персонал
At present,
Запорожской
the
атомной электростанции,
personnel of the Zaporizhzhya
который не
nuclear
был
power
ранен,
plant, which
injured.
was not injured,
как нас сегодня уверяла
as we
постоянно
were
представитель
assured by
США.
the permanent representative of the
Продолжает
U.S.,
работать в
continues
штатном
to
режиме,
work normally
обслуживает объекты станции
and is maintaining
и
plant facilities
отслеживает
and monitoring
радиационную
the
обстановку.
radiation situation.
Радиоактивный фон в
The
районе ЗАЭС
background
в норме.
radiation levels in the area of the nuclear power plant are normal.
Все объекты
All the
Запорожской атомной электростанции
nuclear
находятся
power
под
plant
контролем
facilities are
российских
under the
военных.
control of the Russian
Их
military.
безопасность
Their
полностью
security has been
обеспечена.
fully ensured, and
Продолжается
the
нормальное
station
функционирование
continues to
станции
function
в
normally
соответствии с
in accordance with
технологического процесса.
technological requirements.
Энергоблоки
The power units
Запорожской
of the
атомной
Zaporizhzhya nuclear
электростанции
power
не
plant
повреждены.
were not damaged.
Их состояние
Their
следующее.
condition is as follows.
Первый отключен с
The
целью
first
ремонта.
has been disconnected for repair.
Второй и третий
The
временно
second and third
отключены
have
по
been
решению
temporarily
руководства станции.
disconnected by the decision of the station's management.
Четвертый работает на
The fourth
мощности
is operating
690
at
мегаватт.
690
Пятый и
megawatts,
шестой
and
охлаждаются.
the fifth and sixth are being cooled.
По оценкам руководства МАГАТЭ,
According to the
изложенным
assessments of IA
в
leadership, which
заявлении
were
для
set
прессы
out
от 4
in
марта,
the press statement dated March
работа атомной
4th, the
электростанции
operation of
продолжается
the
в
nuclear power
нормальном
plant
режиме.
continues normally.
Безопасности 6 энергоблоков
Nothing
ничего не
threatens
угрожает.
the safety of the six power
Системы
units.
радиационного мониторинга на
The
станции
radiation monitoring
полностью
systems at the
работоспособны,
station are fully
и нет угрозы
operational,
выброса
and there is
радиоактивного
no
материала.
threat of a release of radioactive material.
Хочу напомнить, что в 2014 году
I would like to remind you that in
украинские националисты
2014,
уже пытались
Ukrainian
дестабилизировать
nationalists already
ситуацию
tried to
на
destabilize the
Запорожской атомной
situation at
электростанции
the
и в
Zaporizhzhya
городе
nuclear power plant
Энергодар.
and in the city of Enerhodar.
Западные государства тогда
Western
проигнорировали
states
данный
ignored
вопиющий
this
случай,
egregious case
который
back
потенциально
then,
мог привести к катастрофе.
and it could have potentially
Мы
led
в свое
to
время
disaster.
привлекали внимание к
And at
этому
the time,
серьезному
we drew
инциденту.
attention to this serious incident.
Сейчас же, когда российские военные
Now,
делают
when
все для
the Russian
обеспечения
military is
безопасности
doing
украинских
everything to
атомных
ensure
объектов,
the safety and security of
разворачивается
Ukrainian nuclear
массированная
facilities,
пропагандистская
a
антироссийская
massive
кампания,
anti-Russian propaganda campaign is
базирующаяся на
unfolding
абсурдных
based on
утверждениях,
absurd
что
allegations
Россия якобы
that
пытается
Russia
создать
is
очаг радиоактивного
allegedly
заражения.
trying to create a source of radioactive
Призываю задуматься,
contamination.
какой
And I urge
смысл
you to
нам это
think,
делать.
what would be the point of us doing
Никто
this?
лучше нас не владеет ситуацией
We
и не
are
может быть
the
в
best
наибольшей
position
степени
to be
заинтересован
aware of, and on top of the situation, we are the most
в том, чтобы
interested in
ядерная и физическая ядерная безопасность на Украине,
maintaining nuclear and general security in Ukraine,
physical
and nuclear security
обеспечивалась надлежащим образом.
to be properly maintained and
Мы
ensured in
соседи
Ukraine.
Украины.
We are Ukraine's
Вместе с
neighbors.
белорусами и украинцами мы пережили трагедию
Together with
Чернобыля.
the people of Belarus and Ukraine,
Поэтому
we lived
мы
through the tragedy of
больше других
Chernobyl, and so we are
заинтересованы в
more
сохранении
interested than
нормальной
most in maintaining
радиационной
a
обстановки на
normal
всей территории
radiation
Украины.
situation throughout the territory of Ukraine.
Хотел бы вновь подчеркнуть, что
I would like
опасность
to
для
emphasize
гражданского
once
населения
again
Украины
that the
исходит не
danger
от
to the
российских
civilian
войск,
population of Ukraine is not
от
emanating from Russian
украинских
troops. It is
националистов,
coming from
удерживающих
Ukrainian
в
nationalists
заложниках
who
мирное
are holding
население ряда
the
крупных
civilian
городов
populations of a
и
number of large cities
устраивающих
hostage
диверсии и
and carrying
провокации,
out acts of
одну из
sabotage and
которых мы с вами
provocations, one
сейчас
of which
обсуждаем.
is what we are now
После
discussing.
этого во всем пытаются
After
обвинить
that,
Россию.
they attempt to blame Russia for
Вчерашний
all of it.
инцидент на
Yesterday's incident at
Запорожской
the
атомной
Zaporizhzhya nuclear
электростанции
power
наглядно это
plant
иллюстрирует.
is a clear illustration of this.
А ваша
And
реакция
your
на
reaction
этот
to
инцидент
this
и попытки
incident
раздуть
and
из
your
всего этого
attempts to
скандал
blow it
мирового
into a
масштаба,
global
уважаемые
scandal,
западные
my
коллеги,
dear Western colleagues,
не оставляют сомнений в
leave
том,
no
что радикалы
doubt
и экстремисты
that
на
the
Украине
radicals and
находились и
extremists in
находятся
Ukraine
под
were
вашей
and
плотной
are
опекой и
under
защитой.
your close guardianship and
У них от
protection.
вас своего рода
They have
карт-бланш.
a sort of carte blanche from you.
Ради проекта Украины вы готовы
For
забыть
the
о
sake of your
будущем и
Ukrainian project, you're
благосостоянии
ready to
простых
forget about the
украинцев,
future and
как
well-being of
8 лет пытались
ordinary
не замечать
Ukrainians,
планомерные
just as for 8
обстрелы
years you tried to
мирных
ignore the
граждан
systematic
Донбасса со
shelling of
стороны
the
вооруженных сил
civilians
Украины.
of Donbass by the armed forces of Ukraine.
Призываем вас образумить своих подопечных.
We urge you to calm
По-прежнему в
down your
худших традициях
mentees
террористов
who,
из ИГИЛ и их
in the worst
идлибских
traditions
соратников,
of ISIL
прикрывающихся
terrorists and their
мирным
Idlib associates,
населением,
are hiding behind civilians,
размещающих тяжелое
placing
вооружение и
heavy
установки залпового
weaponry
огня в
and
жилых
multiple
кварталах.
rocket launchers in residential areas.
В Мариуполе националистами
In
задержано
Mariupol,
60
nationalists have
граждан,
detained 60
следовавших
citizens
к
who were
гуманитарному
on
коридору,
their way
и
to the
насильственно
humanitarian
перевезены в
corridor that was
34-ю
established
местную
and
школу,
forcibly
которая
transported them
заминирована.
to the 34th local school,
Теперь
which
эти
has been
террористы
mined. Now
используют
these
мирных жителей
terrorists
как
are
живой
using
щит,
civilians as a human
шантажируя
shield
наступающее
and
формирование
blackmailing the the advancing forces of the Donetsk People's Republic with their readiness to blow up a school full of hostages. These terrorists are preventing those civilians wishing to leave the cities from doing so. This practice is affecting not only Ukrainians but also foreign citizens. The number of foreign nationals who are being forcibly held by Ukrainian nationalists is shocking. In Kharkiv, this includes 3,189 citizens of India, up to 2,700 citizens of Vietnam, 202 citizens of China. In Sumy, this includes 576 Indian citizens, 101 Ghanaian citizens, and 121 Chinese citizens. In Chernihiv, there are 9 citizens of Indonesia being held. Yesterday in Kharkiv, nationalists fired on a group of Chinese citizens who were trying to independently leave into Russian territory, and 2 of them were injured. The Russian military is doing everything to ensure the peaceful evacuation of foreign nationals. Thus, in the Belgorod region, at the Nekhotievska and Sudza checkpoints, as of 6 a.m. today, 130 comfortable buses were standing ready in order to leave for Kharkiv and Sumy to rescue Indian students and other foreign citizens. Checkpoints have been equipped with temporary accommodations, rest facilities, and hot meals. Mobile medical stations have been deployed with stocks of medications. The evacuees will be later transported to Belgorod and subsequently brought home by air. I would like to draw your attention to another egregious episode regarding which we would like to hear clarification from the Secretariat's rapporteur. The Telegram channel of the so-called Territorial Defense of Kramatorsk published a message about the requisitioning of cars of UN mission personnel. And if the Secretariat is not aware of this, we are ready to provide the relevant materials. And that message states, and I quote, "Sorry, but the goal justifies the means. We have requisitioned UN vehicles as we need them now."
Конец цитаты.
Как утверждают националисты, цитаты, со стороны ООН есть полное понимание. Никаких официальных заявлений либо протестов со стороны ООН не было. Конец цитаты. Нас крайне тревожит, что автомобили миссии ООН могли оказаться в руках террористов и ими использоваться в террористических целях. Если же секретариат ООН действительно в курсе этой ситуации, как утверждают националисты, то хотели бы получить разъяснение, почему об этом of why the UN did not inform member states of this. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of India.
Thank you, Madam President. I thank USG DiCarlo and DG Grossi for their briefings. It is regrettable that the situation in Ukraine has worsened further since the Council last convened on this matter. An immediate cessation of violence and end to all hostilities are essential. We continue to carefully follow the developments regarding the safety and security of Ukraine's nuclear power reactors and facilities. India attaches the highest importance to ensuring safety and security of nuclear facilities, as any accident involving the nuclear facilities may have severe consequences for public health and the environment. India accords the highest priority to the discharge by the IAEA of its safeguards and monitoring activities in accordance with its statute in an effective, non-discriminatory and efficient manner. We have also noted the latest information available with regard to the nuclear power plants and facilities in Ukraine, including today's updates provided by the DG IAEA on the current situation. Madam President, while we are discussing the nuclear dimension of an unfolding conflict, this Council must acknowledge that there is a pressing humanitarian crisis confronting us in Ukraine, where safety and security of innocent civilians, including several thousand Indian nationals, in particular students, are at stake. We therefore hope that the second round of talks between the two sides contributes to the immediate establishment of a safe humanitarian corridor. As reiterated by my Prime Minister in his conversations with global leaders, including of the Russian Federation and Ukraine, differences must be resolved through sustained dialogue and diplomacy. Commitment to the principles of the UN Charter, to international law, and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of all states are key principles in this regard. I thank you.
I thank the representative of India for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Mexico. You have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta.
Thank you.
Agradecemos a
Madam
la
President.
subsecretaria
We
Di
would like
Carlo y
to
al
thank
director general
Undersecretary General Di
Grossi
Carlo
por
and
sus
Director General
presentaciones.
Mr. Grossi for their
Al igual que
briefings.
otras
Like other
delegaciones,
delegations, we
expreso
would like
la
to
preocupación de
express
mi país
my
por el
country's
incidente
concern
relativo a la
for
planta
the incident
nuclear
which occurred
de
in the
Zaporizhzhya.
nuclear plant of
Si bien la
Zaporizhzhya.
información
While the
que se nos
information
presenta indica
presented to
que
us
los
would
reactores
indicate that the
nucleares
nuclear
no fueron
reactors were
afectados
not impacted
y que los niveles
and
de
that radiation
radiación
levels
no han
have
incrementado,
not increased,
esto no
this does
disminuye
not
la
in
gravedad
any
del
way
incidente
diminish the
ni las
gravity of the
posibles
incident nor the
consecuencias que
possible
se derivarían
consequences which
en
would
caso de
stem
una
from
afectación mayor.
greater impact.
El disparo de
Firing
proyectiles
missiles
contra o en las
on
inmediaciones
or in the
de una
immediate
central de
environment
energía nuclear
around a nuclear energy
viola
plant
el principio
is a
fundamental
violation of the
relativo
fundamental
a la
principle
integridad
which relates
física
to
de
the
las
physical
instalaciones
integrity
nucleares
of nuclear
que deben
facilities,
mantenerse
which should
seguras
be
en
maintained
todo
safely
momento y ante cualquier
at any
circunstancia.
time, at all times, and under
En
any
2009,
circumstances. In
La
2009,
Conferencia General del
the
Organismo
IAEA
Internacional de
General
Energía
Conference
Atómica adoptó por unanimidad
unanimously
la
approved
decisión de
the
reafirmar las
decision to
resoluciones de
reaffirm the resolutions adopted in
1985 y
1985 and
1990
1990,
en las que se
which
establece
establish explicitly,
explícitamente que,
and I
y
quote,
cito, cualquier
any
ataque
armed
o
attack
amenaza contra
on
instalaciones
and threat
nucleares con
against
fines
nuclear
pacíficos
facilities devoted to peaceful
constituye
purposes
una violación a los
constitutes
principios
a
de la Carta
violation
de las
of the
Naciones
principles of
Unidas
the United
y al
Nations Charter
derecho internacional.
and
Termino cito.
international law, end quote.
También es necesario
It is also
mencionar la
necessary
preocupación que
to
existe
mention
en
the
relación con la
concern
planta nuclear de
about
Chernobyl.
the Chernobyl nuclear power
Cualquier
plant.
incidente en
Any
esas dos
incident
plantas
in
o en
these
cualquier
two
otra
plants or in any
puede
other
tener
plant
graves
could have
repercusiones tanto en
serious
la salud
repercussions both
como en
on
el
the
medio
health
ambiente.
or on
Si
the
a poco
environment.
más de una semana del inicio del conflicto
Just a week
hay ya
into the conflict,
1.2
there
millones
are
de
already more
refugiados,
than 1 million
las
refugees,
consecuencias
and
humanitarias
the
adicionales
additional
de
humanitarian
un accidente
consequences of a
radiológico que
radiological
libere material
accident which would
radioactivo
release radioactive
serían
material
tan graves
would be so
que
serious
resulte
that it is
imperativo
actually now
tomar
imperative
todas las
to
medidas
take all
preventivas que
measures
estén a nuestro alcance
that are
para
preventative, that are
evitar.
within our reach in order to
Señora
prevent that
Presidenta,
from happening.
no se
Madam
justifican
President,
las
there
actividades
is no
militares en
justification
estos sitios.
for military activities in
Son
these sites.
instalaciones
These are
nucleares
nuclear
claramente
facilities which
identificables.
are clearly identifiable,
Atacarlas está
and
expresamente
attacking them
prohibido por el
is
derecho
expressly
internacional
and specifically
humanitario.
prohibited by
La
international
seguridad
humanitarian law.
física de las
The
instalaciones
security,
nucleares
physical
debe
security and safety of
salvaguardarse
nuclear
siempre,
facilities should
así
be
como
always
los
safeguarded
elementos que
in all
garanticen
circumstances,
la
as well as
seguridad
all
de dichas
elements that
instalaciones
guarantee the
a
security of
los
these
que se ha
facilities,
referido
which
puntualmente
was occasionally
el
referred
director
to by the
general
Director
del
General of the
OIEA.
IEA.
Apoyamos su
We
iniciativa
support his
para
initiative
asegurar que las
in order
partes
to
cumplan
ensure that the
cabalmente
parties fully
con sus
comply with
compromisos en
their
materia
commitments
de seguridad
undertaken in the
en
area
dichas
of
instalaciones.
security for these
El
facilities.
incidente de Zaporizhzhya se
The
suma a una
Zaporizhzhia
lista
incident
creciente de ataques
should be
directos o
added to a
colaterales
growing list of
en
direct
contra de la
attacks or
infraestructura
collateral
civil.
attacks against
El
civilian
derecho
infrastructure.
internacional, el derecho internacional
International law,
humanitario y las
international
convenciones sobre
humanitarian law,
seguridad
and
física
the
nuclear
conventions on
deben
physical nuclear
respetarse sin
safety
excepción.
should be respected without
Hacemos un
exception.
llamado
We would
a que las
call
acciones militares
for
de la Federación
the
de
military
Rusia en
action
territorio
of the
ucraniano
Russian Federation
se
on
apeguen a
Ukrainian
esos
territory
principios
to
del derecho
adhere
internacional
closely to the
y al
principles of
principio de
international law
proporcionalidad de
and the
las
principle of
acciones que
proportionality
afectan la
of
infraestructura
actions which
civil,
impact
en
civilian
particular las
infrastructure,
instalaciones
specifically
nucleares,
nuclear
los
facilities,
equipos y
and
materiales
radioactive
radioactivos.
material and teams.
México reitera su respaldo al
Mexico
llamado del secretario
reiterates
general
and would join
para
the
un
call
cese al
of the
fuego
Secretary
inmediato
General for an
que
immediate
permita dar
ceasefire,
paso a
which
la
would allow
urgente
for
acción
urgent
humanitaria.
humanitarian action
Y ese es
to
justamente el
have access,
objetivo
and
que
that is
perseguimos México
precisely
y
the
Francia
objective
en el proyecto
pursued
de
by France and
resolución
Mexico
que hemos
in our draft
sometido a la
resolution that
consideración
we have
de
submitted
los miembros
for
de este
consideration
Consejo.
by the
Gracias,
members of this
Presidenta.
council. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank the representative of Mexico for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ghana.
Thank you, Madam President. I wish to thank you for convening this emergency session of the Security Council at this critical moment in the situation in Ukraine, and also thank USG DiCarlo and Director General Grossi for the information provided. Ghana is gravely concerned about the intensifying military escalations across several cities in Ukraine, in particular with the attack and shelling of sites close to nuclear power plants and facilities. It is a relief to learn that the situation at the Zaporizhzhya nuclear plant is currently stable and the radioactive emissions remain within accepted range. Every effort must be made to mitigate the risk of accidental emissions, which pose immeasurable risk to the lives of civilians and an already fragile environment. We urge the continued support of the IAEA to provide necessary assistance to the Ukrainian authorities to ensure the safety and security of nuclear installations and staff present on site. We cannot forget too soon the horrors of the 1986 Chernobyl accident and the consequent nuclear catastrophe, which left in its wake long-term effects of radiation exposure to many people in Ukraine and parts of Europe even to date. Ghana strongly appeals to the parties to exercise restraint and to halt the use of force in all areas of critical infrastructure, including the nuclear power plants, and to respect their international obligations to protect human lives and to prevent potential disasters. We take note of the ongoing diplomatic talks between the parties in Belarus and welcome the agreement reached to create a humanitarian corridor to allow for the evacuation of the millions of people caught up in the crossfires, as well as the considerations to provide food and medical supplies. Together with the international community, we express our strong support for the peaceful resolution of this conflict and urge further constructive engagement by the parties at all levels in the pursuit of their security interests and the maintenance of international peace and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Ghana for their statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Madam President.
主席女士，
Madam President,
我认真
I
听取
listened
了迪卡洛副秘书长
attentively
和国
to
际
the
原子
briefings
能
by
机构
USG
总干事
DiCarlo and IAEA
格罗
Director
西
General
所做的通
Mr.
报。
Grossi.
中方
China
密切关注
follows
乌克兰
closely
局势的最新
the
发展，
latest developments in
对
Ukraine
有关
and expresses
扎波罗热核
our
电站的
concern
报道
about relevant report
表
about
示
the
关切。
Zaporizhzhya nuclear
我
power
们注意
plant.
到，
We note that
根据国际原子能机
according
构
to the
从乌克
information
兰核
IAEA
监管
got
当局获取
from
的
Ukraine
信息，
Nuclear Authority,
核电站主
the
要
main
设备
equipments and
没有
nuclear power
发现
plant
损坏，
remain intact,
辐射
and the
水
level
平
of
没有
radiation
变化。
unchanged.
我们也注意
We
到
also
俄
note
方
the
就有
information
关问题
and
提供的情
clarification
况
provided
和所做
by
的
Russia
澄清
on。relevant matters.
中方高度
China
重
attaches
视
great
核安
importance
全
to
和核
nuclear
安保问
safety
题，
and security,
希望
and
相关
hopes
当事方
relevant parties
谨慎
concerned
行
can
事，
act with great
在
caution
国际原子
and
能
with
机构秘书处
specialized
专
technical
业技
assistance
术
from
帮助下，
IAEA
共同确
Secretariat
保
work
乌
to
克兰
jointly
境内
ensure the
有
safety
关核
of
设施
relevant
的
nuclear
安
facilities
全。
inside Ukraine.
主席女士，
Madam President,
乌克兰
the
危机
Ukrainian
还在
crisis is
复
still
杂演变，
undergoing complex
当
changes.
前最
The
重要
most
的
important thing right
还
now
是要缓和
is
紧
to
张
ease
局势，
tension,
避免
avoid
更多
more
平民
civilian
伤亡，
casualties,
并加大
intensify
外交努
diplomatic
力，
efforts,
尽快
and
回
get
到
back as
政
soon
治
as
解决
possible
的
to the
轨
track
道
of
上来。
political settlement.
俄乌双方
Russia and
已
Ukraine
经
have
举
held
行
two
两
rounds
轮
of
直
direct
接对
dialogue
话
and
谈判，
negotiations,
并就
and
建
have
立
reached a
人道走
preliminary
廊
consensus on
达
setting
成
up a
初步共
humanitarian
识。
corridor.
中方
China
对此
welcomes
表示
this
欢迎， and hopes that it can facilitate better protection of civilians and help with safe evacuation of all foreign nationals, including Chinese nationals. We encourage Russia and Ukraine to remain committed to seeking a political settlement and reach a negotiated solution that accommodates the legitimate concerns of the two parties and contributes to Europe's lasting peace and security. China welcomes all diplomatic efforts conducive